This is another episode of Reflections, and my guest is going to be Locodoco, South Korean League of Legends professional, once upon a time, now a coach. So, where I would like to start, Loco, is a long time ago, you told me a story about the time you lived in Singapore.
Oh
So,
yeah, that's a
when did you actually live in Singapore? Was that before even like the League of Legends? Basically, was it before you were in TSM? Was it before all this?
it was long ago. Oh well, it was right after middle school and start of high school and the middle school, so like freshman sophomore yearish.
Okay, can you guess what year it would be?
I would say I lived there 2 years originally, and then I went back for a third year like later on. I guess it wasn't even like 2 years, more like a year and a half, and then I went back for an additional year later on. So what year was it? Oh my God. I would have to go back and check my school records, but it would be like freshman year, sophomore year, and then like a little bit of right before that. Um,
Well, I mean, put it this way. Okay, so season one of League of Legends was 2011. So was it before that?
yeah, way before that.
A couple of years even.
League of Legends did not exist.
Yes, right. Oh, because it'd be like 2008 or something. Right.
Yeah,
So the interesting part of the story, anyway, is that when you lived in Singapore, you knew the
yeah.
player Choi, who actually plays currently as the mid laner of AHQ, and obviously famously was on the Singapore Sentinels.
Yeah.
And as a lot of people might not realize, not only is he a very old school League of Legends player, but he actually was one of those players who tried to simultaneously do Dota as well. Like he had a couple of years he did Dota, and then he did League of Legends as well. And he was actually within Singapore, at least the SEA region. He was reasonably good at both.
Yeah.
So the story you told me essentially was that like you knew this guy pretty well back then when you lived in Singapore, and that you used to play him in Dota back then, etc. So can you give us some insight on that? Because
Okay.
obviously he's still around now as an active player, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So way long ago, back when I lived in Singapore, it's when I started to clash a little bit more with my parents, and I started playing a lot more video game and skipping school, and basically staying over at my friend's place and playing video games. So there was this LAN center I used to go to. It was called IRC, and at IRC I played a lot of Dota. I played Dota from back when I was in US and in Korea, because I mean Dota was hella fun and it was the most popular user map at the time. And I was okay to like good. I was pretty good for how young I was, and I started like playing there a lot. Started making friends with Singaporean locals, and already friends with some of my friends that went to like the same school and that were Korean. But I got into Dota way more so than they were. So I started making friends with the IRC, like the LAN people, and then they were really good. Some of the guys there used to be on teams like KS, King Surf, and then a lot of them more like amateur teams. Like back then, like God, like esports back then is like not really esports. What we would do is we would play pool for money, and we would bet other Dota teams for money, and then like local tournament first place would be like $500 or something, and then if you won that, like it was like insane, like holy, $500, like $100 each to me. It was like a lot of money back then. I mean, nowadays like I like spend $100 on like maybe food with friends, but back then if I got $100, I'd be like, holy man, I'm gonna be like living like kings for 2 weeks. I can eat anything I want from McDonald's. Like, oh my God, I remember eating like $1 McChickens and like $1 McDonald's sandwiches there, and thinking this tastes like this is like food of gods. Like, holy, if I have extra cash, sometimes I'll eat too, and then I felt hella good about things. But yeah, basically, I played Dota and I played pool for money, and I started playing with better and better players, and one of those players was Chawy, and Chawy was definitely like the best player at IRC. He was like best or second best, and sometimes like even better players. Some names that people might recognize nowadays. Ice Ice Ice. He's infamously like he sits like this when he plays Dota,
Sure. Yeah.
and he's like still really good. Played there. Like for how small of a country Singapore was,
Okay.
they were very strong at Dota, and I got to interact with a lot of the players that would become legends.
Okay. Did you keep any contact with Chawi since then?
Oh,
Have
of
you
course.
followed his career at all?
Yeah, and then whenever we meet at events, like we say hi and we'll talk about old days. And then whenever Chawy heard about me playing League, because I was much worse than him at Dota, and I was still top 10 in NA in ladder and stuff, and he was playing Dota, he was like, "Oh, this game must be easy. Loco's top 10 in it." I've been using the account name Locodoco since like middle school, so like I went by Locodoco when I was in middle school, and this was like right after middle school and in high
Sure.
school, so he knew me as Loco also. So yeah. Um,
So it's actually famous within well, I mean, now it's LMS, but at the time it used to be like GP. It used to be all of Southeast Asia, you know, much as they have in Dota. It used to be the same in League of Legends. It was famous within that whole region that Chawy, basically, his teams were the ones that always just missed Worlds like every year, basically, in all these times. And so as a result, people thought like, oh, this guy's never going to kind of get the chance to show he's really good. And then eventually he joined AHQ, but unfortunately the timing of that meant that they decided, you know, Worlds to use Westdoor instead because they were swapping between the two. It was a complicated scenario. Do you have it? You made it sound like when he was in Dota, he was way better than you, and you were like in awe of this guy. Do you have any insight into why Chawy never really showed himself to be like an elite level mid laner? Because I mean, I remember watching actually even a couple of seasons ago, like I say, in AHQ when he was in AHQ, and he was basically what they did was they just had Westdoor play like Westdoors, you know, like Zed and Fizz and stuff, assassins, and then they would bring Chawy in when they wanted to run a comp that was just mages, basically control mage. So what was his strengths, and did he have? Was there something about him that meant he couldn't somehow like perform on a top level or in the clutch games or whatever, you know, whatever terminology you'd use?
I mean, in Chawy and Dota he was way better than me, but I was also very, very young, and I was very smart about how I played the game, and I just played repeatedly over and over again. Like when I started playing League, I was much more analytical about what I was doing wrong and what I was doing right, and I was able to like fix my own mistakes. I'm sure like Chawy did some of that in Dota, so he improved much quicker than me, and also I think he's like a year or two older than me, so he was just like more mature and smarter. In terms of League, well, Chawy was actually really good like early on, like season 1, season 2, season 3-ish. Comparatively to the competition, I think that's when he was better than like nowadays. Nowadays, he did get better than he was in season 1, 2, and 3, but he's worse compared to the competition. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, compared to his peers.
Yeah, compared to his peers. So I feel like he didn't get to shine internationally when he was like really good and we had a good head start on people. And also he dealt with like a lot of stuff. Like I mean, he played at international. He dealt with Dota for a lot of times and getting like screwed over by teams. I think like Hong Kong esports also like had like him in Hong Kong esports also like he had a small stink there. He'd been wanting to come to NA for a long time. He also did army. Like he's much older, so I just don't think like the stars lined up for Chawy to really shine in League of Legends. And I mean for him, I think the moment he finished international, he should have dropped everything and gone all in on League, and I think he would have been a very successful player.
So a lot of people might realize this next detail that you were at one point in time a member of TSM.
Yeah.
But obviously the context is it's not really TSM that's anything like any TSM they remember. Like even the season 2 TSM, it wasn't like that, you know. It was season 1, it was a very different set of players. I mean, at one point in time, like St. Vicious was on the team and then Chaos was the support player. You know, like the entirely different world that anyone knows. But you did tell me an interesting detail, which was something along the lines of, even though you were still playing for TSM while you were back in Korea, when you'd moved back after you'd finished school in America, something along the lines, right, that you were actually wanted to just stay in TSM and you would have played for them at the Season 1 Championship. But instead, what was the story? Why go Korea? And obviously at the time, we're talking about Season 1, there was no Korean server. And Korean League of Legends, you know, was very small, and no one yet knew where it would go. So, what was the story? You could have just been a TSM player for the next year or two.
So, we were on like TSM was like, Andy was actually on CLG when he started TSM. So he was on a different team, and he started his own team because he wanted his website to have a team. It was me, Saint, someone named Feedfest, Chaos, and Odd One. And I mean, Andy paid for my computer and somewhat for my internet. I mean, thank God for Andy, because my parents didn't like really want to support my gaming habits. So Andy supported my gaming habits as long as I streamed for his website and wrote a few guys. And like yeah, we were just like a team that was like 5 dudes like coming together like and making a team. Like I forgot his name now, but there was this guy in charge of esports way back in preseason. He doesn't work for Riot anymore, and like I asked him like, hey, can I compete in season 1 with TSM?
Okay.
And he was like, no, you can't. You have to be an American citizen and actually live in the country to do it. And then like, oh, I mean, I was like, okay, I mean, if I can't compete in season 1, and then like, what's the point of even being on TSM? And also like season 1 tournament, like the Worlds tournament that Riot was hosting was like the biggest thing. So it didn't make sense for me or for TSM to like stay on the team, because if I can't compete in the biggest tournament that's there, like what's the point? So I left, and I mean, yeah, like that's about it. It wasn't like drama or anything. It's I can't play in the biggest tournament, so why would I want to be on the team, and why would they want to keep me?
Okay, so when you start out in Korean League of Legends, people will know there was this team, Maximum Impact Gaming,
Oh,
MiG. It was MiG Frost, but before that, okay, there's a key aspect that I want to ask about, which has never really been properly outlined
mhm.
because it's one of those things where, like, for example, when I got a lot of these notes, obviously, when I wrote that article about your career, but in it, if you notice, I do a very good job actually of not revealing stuff that might be private that you might not want. Really, I just try to stick to like what's known basically publicly. So, wasn't there some sort of situation that you can shed some light on
Okay.
where everyone knows now you made Mig Frost, but actually you were basically just going to go and join what was already the best team at the time, right? Which was, I think it was the Team OP one, right? It was the one that was like corn salad and those guys. Wasn't it something like that? Like there was already a best Korean team and you were going to join them, but then there was like some fuckery went on or something. Can you give us some
Oh,
insight into what went on there before
so, oh
Frost?
my God. So this is like some fucking Game of Thrones shit, and I was like
Okay.
extremely young. So I mean, I'm just gonna lay it down on you guys, and you guys can hear about it and enjoy it for what it is. So there's this team called Team OP, or there's this IRC channel called Team OP. Basically, IRC is like a online chat room, and in Team OP or in just channel OP, all the Koreans chatted there, and like all the Korean players that play League of Legends chatted there, and Koreans were still extremely good in preseason and season one. Like even with 150 ping, like we were like one of the best players, and there were like very famous players like Grand Judge. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure people know who Grand Judge is nowadays. Grand Judge, Lao Ching, uh, who else? Many Reason, a Lilac. So just like super old school Korean players. Oh, Corn Salad, that's a name people might know. And then for upcoming WCG, they had a team called Team OP, and I really really wanted to be on that team because they were the better players and they were older than me and they were just super cool to me. And and Nolza, like I really wanted to be on that team, and I was really young and I was like pretty rude in solo queue, so they wouldn't let me on the team, and I felt like super bad. Like I can't play with TSM for Worlds, and I can't play with Team OP, even though I'm one of the better players, because like it's like very clicky and political, and they don't like me. I felt really down, and then there was another player, like another famous Korean player that um, was very like good, but also didn't get along with like that OP clique, which is Maknoon. And
Oh
then
my goodness, I can see where this story is going. Right? Okay.
Magnoon reached out to me, and Magnoon's like, "Hey, Loco, do you want to make a team?" And then I was like, I can't play with the best team, but like I also really love League of Legends, and I'm like about to start college. I'm like, man, I'm sure I'll make a team with you, Magnoon. So me and Magnoon make a team, and then we get Hoon and Mokuza, and who was our support? Hoon.
Vinyl Cat was that
I
it?
don't think Vinyl Cat was the support for me. I can't remember. But there like we had a team of five, okay?
Okay.
And then like so we're like playing, and then we get to scrim NA teams because I have connections, and then we scrim OP every now and then. More so than scrim, like people just queued up as five, and then they just like met other 5-man queues, and like the very good 5-man queues would always run into each other. So it wasn't really scrims. It was like you would queue as five to snipe the other good 5-man queues. And then we started beating OP a lot, and then like I felt hella good about things. And then I'm like, damn, like we're beating them. And then like OP, like being political and like the people they are, like they reached out to me, and then they're like, hey, Loco, we like you now, and we think you're really good, and we think you're a great leader. Like you should come play for us. And I was very young and naive, and I really wanted to play with like the cool and the big boys. So I left Team McNoon. Actually, it was not even called Team McNoon. It was actually literally called Team Locodoco. I left Team Locodoco
Okay.
and joined OP. And then OP, I clashed like very, very heavily with a jungle player named Nolza. He was like much older than me,
Sure.
and like I disagreed a lot with how the game was played. And then they kicked me off the team. And then McNoon's team got a new AD. So I got kicked. I couldn't join Team OP. I make my own team, and then I leave that team, and then I get kicked from Team OP. And then those are the two teams, like they make it through like the WCG brackets. And then there's this third channel called DC Gallery. Like this is like 4chan of Korea, and then they had a League of Legends section of the board. And then in that board and like in that room, like they made a team with the best players there, and the best players were Ring Troll, Gunwoong, Rapid Star, and MadLife, and who was the last? Oh, and they didn't have a they had a fifth player that I forget. Okay.
Okay.
And then Woon comes up to me, like now the WCG brackets that happen, and then what is it? It's like Woon team and McNoon's team in the finals. Team OP lost to some other team, I forget who. And then Woon's like, hey, Loco, why don't you join my team? And then I was like, oh my god, like I was going to college at the time, and I was thinking, fuck, man, like I heard, like League of Legends burned me at Worlds. League of Legends burned me, like, because I joined the team and then I made my own team and then I left that team, and then I got kicked from the team I wanted to join. Like I'm not sure if I want to do League again. And then because I like League, I joined Gunwoong's team, and then he actually had to kick one person, which was Ring Troll, and then the other person, for some reason, like he wanted to leave on his own, and then I brought in Corn Salad, one of my closer friends from Team OP, and he wasn't in the Team OP lineup, so he could play for our team. So the matchup became me, Corn Salad, Gunwoong, MadLife, and Rapistar. That's like the original like MIG team. It was called Team Darkness. Oh my god, the names were super corny back then. And then so we're in the final WCG Korean qualifiers with versus McNoon team, the original team that I created. We win the first game, and then we lose the second game like super closely. And in the third game, McNoon blind picks Jax. And then we had a strategy prepared, which was Brand Top versus Jax, and it did like really well versus it. And then after we lost the second game, Corn Salad, like he starts like not like I guess like sort of panicking and like doing whatever the fuck he wants and like getting nervous, and then he locks in Singe. And I was like, what the fuck? We practiced Brand versus Jax Top so much and it shit on it so much, and then whatever, Corn Salad picked Singe, and then he got smashed by McNoon. And then we lose in the WCG qualifiers, and then I'm like, oh my fucking god, like my life is over. Like back when you're like 17, 18ish, like anytime something bad happens to you, the first thing you think is like, oh like fucking god, like my life is over. So yeah, we lost that tournament and we didn't get to qualify for WCG, and that's like the unknown darkness of like early Korean League of Legends, where I like hop between teams and I finally like stick with the team, but we eventually get beaten by a team that I created with my own hands.
Okay. So obviously the Frost lineup is the one that people will remember because it was where the OGN era came along. But before the actual OGN Champions began, they had this invitational tournament.
Yeah.
Where they had, it was actually through qualification, but they had the two best Korean teams. So it was McNoon's NaJin team and it was your team with Frost. Mm-hmm. And then they had World Elite from China, who had won an IEM the year before. Not yet the World Elite that people remember with some like Clear Love, etc., but still had some of the players you'll remember. And then they had CLG from North America, and this was CLG when they just had Doublelift for a couple of months. You know, he was the AD carry now. It's actually one of the more beloved lineups that they had. Mm-hmm. Now at this particular time. In Korea, okay, your team and NaJin, it was quite close, you were rivals, etc. And obviously, like I said, World Elite had won the IEM the year before. But coming into this tournament, because at this point in time, no one thinks of the Asian teams as the best. Like when for example, World Elite won that IEM, it was in China as well, So I'm sure the NA teams had all the excuses in the world, and reasons as to why and all sorts of stuff. So everyone in the West thought CLG is going to win this tournament. Yeah. And I know for a fact CLG thought that. Yeah. And so wasn't there some sort of ridiculous storyline where when they beat you in the group or something, then you beat them in the fight, something like that, right? What was the story along those lines of like how it happened? So you ended up winning the tournament, right?
Yeah. So Kim Dong-jin, he's a very famous caster nowadays. I respected him hella because I watched StarCraft a lot, and I always thought he was one of my favorite casters, even in StarCraft. And then like now I'm a pro, and like he casts my own game, and like he talks to me. I'm like, oh my god, Dong-jin, I love you so much. And I'm like early days of pro gaming, I'm just super fanboyish with anyone from StarCraft that I meet, because like I'm just like a regular like boy like growing up like watching StarCraft, and then like StarCraft people are like I'm meeting them like through on-game and like broadcasts, and then they're like, oh, you're Locodoco, I heard about you, like you play League and like you play for this team. I'm like, oh my god, like what the hell, like I know exactly who you are, like I watch all your games, and like I know exactly what strategy you use. Oh my god, like your 2 Strike for Rush is so good, blah blah blah. Like, and Dongjin's like one of my favorite characters, and like I'm talking to him, and then he's like, damn, like Doublelift is so good, like he has like 4 accounts in NA top 10, and then like his stats on it are insane. And then I'm like, man, like because like Doublelift wasn't like, he was starting to be good and he wasn't that good, and we used to play with 150 ping, and I met Doublelift in solo queue, and me and MadLife would smash them all the time, and like Chowster and Doublelift were so cocky. I'm like, no, Dongjin, like I'm better than Doublelift, like we're gonna smash them, like stuff. And then like back then, like me and MadLife were nobodies. And Doublelift and Chowster, like they had a huge name. Like for how small the team was, they had a huge name. And then don't like, no, like it's okay. Like what is it? In work, like early days of Warcraft, Koreans weren't so good either. Like I believe you guys will be good, but like I think it's still very unlikely. I'm like, I'm gonna show you. And then when Chowster and them came, like they infamously refused to scrim any team. Like refused to scrim any Korean team. And their reasoning was like, we're so much better than them. We don't want to teach them anything by scrimming them.
Okay.
and then what is it? We play them. We went like 1-1 versus them in our groups, and we were in finals, and then we beat them 2-0. And then afterwards, like I was all up in their face, like being like, "Oh, what I say, y'all, what I say. I told you I was better. I told you me and my boy MadLife were gonna smash." And I was just all up in Chester and Doublelift's face because of how cocky they were, and we were able to 2-0 them. I mean, yeah. So that's like the story. Like everyone was like against us. They didn't think we would win, and then like we smashed them.
So famously, it was actually only a few months before that infamous clip, which actually I remember Travis re-uploaded it a few years later, where it was from like Whose League Is It or something, or State of the League, one of those shows that he did back. It's probably State of the League. It's the one where, you know, like Doublelift and Hotshot both explain how, you know, like Koreans will never be better than NA, and the line they use, which is probably one of the funniest lines of all time in the context of now, is they have a line where they say, yeah, but the problem is Korea will always be 1 year behind us, you know, which like you can almost see the logic there, but it doesn't work on any level, obviously. So my question is this: okay, I know even when you beat them here, they still thought that they were going to be the best, and that Koreans wouldn't be better, you know. Did you actually know that Korea was going to get very good in League of Legends as well?
So I got ridiculed on CLG Ventrilo cool hangouts like way back in the day. CLG Big Fat GG Ventrilo, or Big Fat GG Ventrilo, which became the CLG Ventrilo. Shout out to my boy GG. So we used to like hang there, and like all the like English speaking like top tier season 1 and preseason players would like hang there, and I was like, Korea's gonna be the best. Like we're really good at video games, and I got ridiculed. I was there like, they're only good at StarCraft. Like what the fuck are you talking about? And like we got 150 ping and we're still doing good. They're like, no way. Like you guys aren't gonna be that good. And like they would ridicule us, and like they would ridicule me because I was the one that spoke English, and I was always like, Korea's gonna be really good. I mean, I always knew Korea was gonna be good. Like systematically, like Korea is really good at churning out pro gamer. It's like a factory. Like young boys come in one end, and then pro gamers pop out the other.
Okay. So one of the interesting things, is when you had this first OGN season, it was obviously the one where people will know the storyline already. You know, it's like the movie Titanic. They know at the end the ship sinks, but much like the movie Titanic, you know, before that, it's all going great, you know. It was an amazing venture, very ambitious, you know. So in this scenario, Frost in the spring season, up until the final, people thought was the best team. And actually, you even beat the big rival, Zenix Storm. You beat them. You beat NaJin, obviously, McNoon's team. These were all close games, but you guys won them all. And so everyone thought, right, Frost is going to win.
Yeah.
One of the details that I noticed, from watching all those matches was, up until the finals, Woon, who at the time played top lane, because obviously you were the AD carry, was actually doing really well. Like, he was actually one of the best players, and he was actually, in general, outmatching most of the people he played. But famously, in the final, like, really, the 2-star players on Blaze that won them the final was like, like Ambition had one game, I think, where he went crazy. But in general, it was Reapered who just like carried hit from his position, basically. He got a lot of kills.
If you go back and watch the games, I won my lane all 3 games.
You had one, I think game 2 you did very well. You were up like 3 kills or whatever. You still lose the game anyway. So obviously in the finals, you got swept by Blaze, right? First of all, what do you think of when Woon was a top laner? Like, was he a good player? Did he choke in the finals?
Can I tell like the entirety of the story?
Okay.
So, it's gonna sound ridiculous now, but so I invented a term called snowballing, and then like even before the game, like they asked me a joke because like it was like for everyone else involved, like it was a giant joke, but for me, I was like, this is how you should play the game. Like they were like, what's your favorite kind of ball? I was like, what do you mean? And then the caster, like the OGN, like the what is it? The screaming guy. The really big OGN caster, like the really famous one. Like he asked me that joke because like Cloud Templar joked about it on his stream, and then everyone's like, "Oh, Loco's crazy about Snowball. Loco's crazy about Snowball." Because I would be like, "We cannot give up 1 kill, and this is what we should do. When you get 1 kill, you should play towards that lane, and this is called Snowball. Like you snowball the lead you have."
Yes.
And then everyone's like, "You're so obsessed about Snowball. Like, you can't just get one kill and win the game, and you can't like. There's no snowball. It's just like something you're obsessing about. And then they made a joke about it, like what's Loco's kind of ball, and then the joke was it's snowball. Like ha ha ha, so funny. And then like I was like, we need to snowball the lane like so much, and then it's like snowballing is super important. So like me and Cloud had like a big argument about, I'm like, if I get a kill, then we're coming bottom and we're snowballing the lane, and because we did that a lot and we wanted to move away from them a little bit. Like pre-level 6, me and MadLife would be able to make a lot of kills, and at level 6 Cloud Templar would play something like Skarner and Amumu, and he would gank level 6 and I wanted to take turret. And while it sounds like in theory like a very simple strategy nowadays, but it was like mind-blowing to people back then. Like and I always kept asking for ganks whenever I got a kill. I'm like, I need to snowball. You go snowball here there. And then everyone would just like ridicule me and joke about it. Oh, Loco always wants ganks. Like Loco wants to snowball. Like, so we had like a huge fight about that. And then Cloud Templar said like he should help top more. So, and if you go back and watch the games, like Cloud Templar tried to help top more, even though bottom had a lead. And then after that, like we had like a huge fight. Like we had fights about everything. Like we had fights about when can you go out to see girls or like family, and then like sometimes like Cloud Templar, because he was older, because he would get an exception, and then I would rage so much about it. I was like, why, like it's so unfair, like how can he go out and why can't I go out? And I was a little bit what's the best word to describe it? I was very naive and like very just like young and like bubbly, and like I just wanted to hang out, and I wanted to like hang out with friends, hang out with fangirls, and like hang out with StarCraft players. And every time like I get invited, like I'd be like, oh my god, coach, I want to go so much. Like, oh my god, like I've always been like a super bubbly and like confident and like sociable person, and then I started getting like a lot of attention, so I just wanted to hang out with everyone and like have fun, like, and like whenever I wanted, like after practice, like go drink, and we would just argue all the time about it. So like leading up to it, like Woong played well. And then when Woong started like dying in finals, like he started shutting down and he started not talking. And Cloud was like, hey, I'll get your lane. Don't worry. And then like my whole thing was, no, like don't go top anymore. Like I need ganks. Like I want to snowball. I'm winning so much. And he's like, stop with like the snowballing bullshit. Like there is no snowball. We help the lanes that need help. And it, like that was like the big arguments like that was had back then.
So you kind of actually touched on some of this already, but from the outside, people might think, oh, well, the reason Loco left Frost now is because, yeah, they got upset. You know, they lost in the finals, all the rest of it. But as you were mentioning here, you had a very different personality to some of the members of the team. And at the time, one detail that a lot of people outside Korea might not know is that obviously one of the things that was very unique actually about the early Korean teams is they were the first to have head coaches. Now, it wasn't coach like, you know, tell you all the tactics, but it was coach like kind of be the boss of the team and arrange things. You know, it was a mixture of like manager and coach, okay?
Yeah,
so yours famous, yes. So yours famous was a very famous one called On Air because he was the coach of both Blaze and Frost. Now, if you were someone who had these issues with like restrictions, like curfews or girlfriends or whatever, was On Air the one that you had the clash with? How would you describe your relationship with him?
I actually clashed a lot with MadLife and On Air and Cloud. Like those three were like the biggest clashes. Like, and Woong and Rapid Star were like behind me, like supporting, like, hey, you can go out and show. Like they want to see friends too. So I mean, I don't know how much I want to say, but I'm not sure if I should say. When I was young, not nowadays, but when I was young, so my dad really wanted me to go to like a really great college. There's three really like the best colleges in Korea. It's called SKY, Seoul University, Goryeo University, and Yonsei University. And because I didn't go to any of those colleges, I went to Hongdae. It's a art school.
Yeah.
It's a really great art school, but it's not the three great Korean colleges. I really well, I think my dad said it as a joke, but when I was younger, like I kind of like accepted it like just for what it was. He was like, if you're not gonna go to these colleges, you should date a girl from these colleges. Because I was somewhat famous and I still think like very cute. A lot of girls like started showing me interest, and I started seeing a lot of girls from Seoul University, Goryeo University, and Yonsei University, and like I would like to go out and like see these girls, and like those were like the biggest clashes with Cloud and Woong. And On Air or Cloud, On Air, and MadLife. MadLife has three little sisters, so he does. I would see a new girl pretty frequently, and like those are like the biggest arguments that I personally had with MadLife. And with like On Air, he just like didn't like me going out, but I was also the best player on the team at the time, so like it was like you can't go out, and I'm like, hey, I like talk the most in scrims, and like I do the best, I come up with like the most strategies, and I also play the best. Like Woong's so bad, like Rapid Star so bad, like Cloud Templar can't play aggressive junglers, and like we would argue, and like eventually like he would let me go out, and Cloud was just like the order must be like maintained, like you must listen to your elders, like so like those are what we fought about all the time. And like Woong like getting smashed in switch roles because he lost complete confidence and like his ability to top lane. And I mean, yeah, like for and so infamously why what is it? I got kicked from the team was after the finals. We were gonna have like a big team dinner, and we were already gonna get sponsored by Azubu, and I also worked hella in the Azubu sponsorship, and I was integral parts of it. And I didn't want to go to the dinner. I was like so devastated. I was so mad at Woong, and I was so mad at Cloud Templar. I'm like, I won lane, and you guys didn't like snowball my lane. Like, how could you? Like, we could have fucking won, and then we got fucking 0-3. So I was like extremely upset. And I went out and hung out with like the OGN people, and there were some people from like I won't say who out of privacy, but there was a few Western media that came, and I was seeing one of the interviewer and like the journalist person at the time, and then so I went to go see her because they came to like the OGN dinner, and then so infamously I didn't go to like the team dinner, and I went to go see the girl I was seeing at the time and to go see OGN. So yeah, things started to really separate from there.
Okay.
Oh man,
So,
Youngmi was pretty stupid.
Sure, but listen, we all have our path in life, right? So when you were in Frost was obviously very early in the careers of every single player in that team, and in the years beyond that, MadLife, I mean, obviously he's in your team now, but became very, very famous as a support player. And at one point in time, people thought he was not only the best support player, but, you know, people used to say he was like the best player, maybe even because he played, in theory, the weak role, you know, but he was incredibly dominant from it. You have a famous theme that runs through your career that I've no doubt we will touch on, where you consider yourself like the support father, you know, like you train the supports up and then they become better. Now, regardless of whether people agree with that or not, it's obviously, I mean, they can't know what you know, and it's just they having to make their own decision. What was your involvement with MadLife like? Like, did he, because here's the thing, I've heard you make it almost sound, I can't tell how serious you were, like you trained him to be good at support, but I've also heard him in interviews say like you helped him with some things, but maybe you exaggerate that. What's like the reasonable answer? Like how much did you help with the development of MadLife?
So I'll only say parts that he and I will both agree on, and then I'll say the parts he might not agree on, but I think it's true, okay? So when MadLife first started playing, he had no idea about lane control, level 2 timings, maintaining priority, all laning it at certain times, and knowing power spikes. I was very good at that. I played Dota. In Dota, like hitting certain levels, like you just all in the other person. You learn your ultimate and you go ham at level 6. You get a level up on the other guy because you deny them, and then you go ham. So I was really good at those concepts, and we played a lot of comps like Tristana All-Star. What else did we play a lot? Tristana All-Star. We played like a lot of aggressive stuff where we could get level spikes and like just smash other people. I knew to camp brushes. Like I knew like these little parts that might seem basic now, and I was very ahead in terms of understanding concepts and knowing how it could win the game. So I taught him a lot of those basic concepts, like what things that people might consider basic nowadays. It was not basic, and people played randomly. And I taught him a lot about brush control, about level 2 spikes, about being aggressive together, and about having like the correct timings and all-inning people. Things that MadLife were really good at that I did not teach. He was very, very like skilled at predicting and like skill shot wise, like predicting where people will go and reading people. And he was also very just mechanically apt. Like I worked with other supports even before that, but one thing I always felt like was this guy doesn't really understand, and he can't execute things on the level I want to. And MadLife's execution was really crisp. Still is nowadays.
So one thing I found very interesting that you told me, because obviously this is one of those problems where, like for the early years of League of Legends, there were very rarely like interviews with Koreans, and even when there are now, like it's a famous thing that I'm sure everyone who's a big fan of Korean League of Legends knows, is that what they tell Westerners is very different from what might actually go on. So I've never heard this ever addressed in an interview about MadLife, but you told me something along the lines of that actually MadLife was someone where basically he wanted you, the AD carry, to lead the lane entirely. Like you would tell him what to do and when to go in and what to do. Now this is obviously will be quite shocking to Westerners because first of all, obviously MadLife's a fantastic player, but also if you think of like his highlights, they're all. It looks like it's him making so outrageous play, So how was he? If he's someone who could visualize and conceptualize such a great outplay like he would do, how could he not kind of like be the guy who led the lane as well? How could he not? Why did his mind not work that way? How do you resolve that?
I mean, I'll say this about myself. I wasn't always a great leader, and sometimes I'm still not, but I was always a leader, be it a bad one, and I was just very talkative, and then I asked him to do things constantly, and I had a very like set thing on how I wanted my support to play so we could achieve things as a duo. Like infamously, like there's some Janna plays that he made, like him reacting to like people coming in. Like I'm not telling him like you ult first like this, and nothing like that. He reacts, but like after the game we might talk about like in this situation I want you to ult first and tornado later, or I want you to hold tornado for this skill. And like he would understand things like very, very well. Like I would tell him a certain concept and he would learn that concept and he'd be able to use that concept elsewhere like very often.
Okay. So the team you went to afterwards for the next season of OGN was the StarTale team.
Yeah.
Now this is a team where it's basically, for anyone who doesn't realise, basically like sort of KT Rolster, right? It's basically a bunch of the players who later on went to be in KT Rolster. And obviously, in fact, even Coma, SK Telecom coach, was in this team at one point in time. And one thing people won't realise, right, is that actually when you first joined this team, you were the big name. By far above all these guys. They'd be like a decent, like a potential like rising team the first season, but they were nowhere close to a top team. And in this season was where actually I remember watching. Okay, and first of all, because you were one of the few Koreans who kind of like played up to the cameras during the games, you would always get like the famous camera shot. They do if like if something exciting happened, and especially if you won the game, they'd put the camera on in case you did something. But they also did it this season because you were one of the star players. And I remember when I watched that actually things were going really well in this season until the playoffs. And then in the playoffs, this is like, it had to be this way, obviously. In the playoffs, you had to go ahead and play against NaJin Sword, which was the team built entirely around McNoon, who was obviously your big rival, right? A guy who you would have played with. And famously, unfortunately, you lost this one. So what was the StarTale experience like?
Yeah, I was James Harden on the Houston Rockets. Let's say that.
Okay.
What was I? I mean, StarTale was like I went to. Like I had a lot of offers when I left Frost. Every single team offered me everything. Like, and I wanted to go to StarTale because I thought they had pretty decent players. And I mean, I wasn't wrong. I mean, StarTale players were really good, and they did turn out to be really good. The experience was like kind of shitty, to be honest. I say this again and again, but I was very young and very immature, so I was like very like salty and very like upset about what happened at Frost. Because I felt like I was in the right. And I mean, I did try hard on StarTale, and we did well. But at that time, I just wasn't very smart. I had a lot of head start because I was like, I had a knack for things, and then I didn't improve on them. I just thought I was the best, and I lost because my teammates didn't listen. And like that bad attitude carried over to StarTale, and I didn't learn as much. And I just played the way I usually play, and that was good enough to get us out of groups, but not to beat NaJin in round of 8.
Okay. Why is, aside from the story you told before, like the Game of Thrones one where you were basically in what would become NaJin and then you left to go back and join the OP one, aside from that, what was the thing with McNoon? Because the thing is, to Westerners, McNoon is a very, obviously a very sociable guy, but the thing is, from meeting McNoon, he's like, I don't say this as an insult, but he's just one of those people where he's very nice, but in a very simple way, Like, I can't imagine, he doesn't seem like there's anything...
Weird. Like, McNoon's
sure,
weird.
But there doesn't seem like there's anything malicious about him though. So why did you? What was it about your personalities that clashed? Why didn't you ever get along with McNoon? Why was he your nemesis?
I'm not sure if I should say this. Oh man. So I mean, me and McNoons were like the two shining stars in Korea, and we always clashed. And in solo queue, when we meet each other, we would like shit talk each other. And like I would enjoy smashing McNoon in spring, and I'm sure he enjoys smashing me in summer. Um, ah, we had our differences, and we were both weird, but I was a little bit less weird and a little bit more sociable and a little bit more better at talking to girls. And long story short, there was this girl that Magnoon liked. I stepped in the middle of it. It didn't end very well for anyone, and Magnoon and I like really started disliking each other, and the rivalry would intensify anytime we would meet. We were very young people. We were very young people in spotlights, and we both thought we were on the top of the world. And I was slightly better than him at English and talking to girls, and I abused that. And he was, in a lot of ways, better than me at League because he had more raw natural talent and he played more and he was a little bit less cocky. So I don't want to go into the exact story, but me and Magnoon clashed over a lot of things.
Okay. So one of the themes from your answers that people will be hearing now that might shock them actually is that within the Korean scene, okay, as you mentioned, like, yes, maybe like they'll let a Cloud Templar go and have time with girls, etc. Because Cloud Templar's persona is, I'm a very responsible guy, I'm the older guy, you know. And the idea is if you let that guy go do it, you know he's not going to be out all night. And, you know, in theory, it shouldn't affect his work, you know. But it was a very famous thing, especially in this era, that the coaches that did exist were starting to make, like, you know, rules like a curfew. And, you know, you can do things certain times, but obviously you can't just go and party whenever you want. Was this always going to be a problem for you within the Korean scene, do you think? This kind of the fact that, like, I've always described it like this. Because you'd been to the West and lived in America for a while, then when you came back to Korea, you're Korean still, but you had a little bit of, you wanted some of the things of the West, right? Where you could chill and you could hang out with friends and it wasn't as kind of strict. It's fairly authoritarian in Korea, right?
So nowadays, I mean, I'm the strict one, and I mean, my team calls me Hitler all the time.
Yikes, okay.
Um, like, I was really young, and I just really appreciated the attention. Like, I had some attention in high school and middle school, but the amount of attention I was receiving was overwhelming, and in a lot of ways, like, I felt like righteous. My
What do you
parents,
mean by that?
my parents told me like video games were not good for you, and I started to make money on my own. I mean, one of like my like biggest like things growing up was I was kind of spoiled, and my dad and my mom like they paid for a lot of things, and they just let me have anything I want. Except for when it came to like video games, like they would never buy me a new computer, like they would never buy me like new games that I wanted, and like it just like infuriated me. Like you support me in everything I do except for this like one thing that I like love so much. And when I like started making it on my own, like I just felt so good about myself and like so good about like the attention I was getting, like the money I was making, like the success I was having, that like my head was like honestly it was the size of the sun, and I just did whatever I wanted. And I mean, I don't think it would always been a problem. I wish I matured quicker, and I wish I listened to people when I was younger. It's something I tell like a lot of my younger players that I interact with, that you will always get this attention. Like you will always like be this famous. Like you will always have like these kind of eyes on you because you're so great at the game. And a lot of people will be in your position to get a lot of attention and a lot of money and a lot of fame. It's not the talent that makes you special, but it's what you do with your talent. And I didn't do like much with my talent. Like I am still a known quantity, and I still do think I had a pretty successful career, and I am having a successful career. But it could have been so much more if I just matured and listened to my elders earlier. So I mean, to answer your question, I mean, I do think I could have grown out of it if if my head was just a little bit smaller and I listened to the older people around me earlier.
Okay. So one thing that, like, at least this is just my observation, okay, is this is something actually I've noticed in a lot of people who, like, I hate that term toxic because unfortunately people just spam it where it doesn't belong. Like, you know, they spam it to people who are just like very stubborn or hard-headed or maybe selfish, you know, like, but not necessarily like literally, you know, flaming people and telling them to get cancer or whatever. But one of the trends with the people who get labeled that way in that particular sense, so basically I guess you could just call them people who get labeled bad teammates, is often the case that what they do is they're just people who put too much emphasis on the idea that if you're skilled or you're the better player than someone else, then you should kind of be in charge of that person in a sense, or you should be able to say what you should be in charge of yourself basically. If you're a very good player, you should kind of that should be the metric that decides if you can do what you want or not. And so that's obviously, like, to anyone thinking about this topic, it's pretty much a young person's problem, because as you grow older in life, you realize, there's other people who are very good, and you start to learn other people's talents that are very different to your own. How long do you think it took before you started to move away from that? Because it seems like it's something that at different times in your career has been a problem, right?
I think I was a problem all the way to the very end of my career. I don't think like I fully matured until the very end. Even with like all the clashes I had and like all the bad things that happened to me, like I was very naive to think like the circumstances weren't in my favor. Yeah, I mean, I did well in school also without like trying very hard. I got into colleges that were great without trying very hard. Just like till the very end, like it was not something that really like clicked for me, and it haunts me like all the time. And I think about like going back to playing again because now I'm a little bit more mature, a little bit more like easier to work with, and I can understand multiple points of view. I mean, yeah, until the very end of my career, I guess. Until the very end of my career as a player, I was very stubborn in my views as like talent rules everything, and like being the best like just triumphs like being nice. It's important to be the best more so than being nice.
Is that very different to how Koreans in general think in society?
I Koreans do appreciate talent and they do overvalue talent and geniuses, but they more so like strive for like not I wouldn't say unity, but more so like order and
Yes.
like
okay. Structure.
Structure. So I did not fit into the structure very well.
Okay. So even though this next period, okay, when you went and joined CLG was very brief, there's actually a little bit before that
Yeah.
you've never actually revealed, okay, which is basically you could have stayed in Korea because at the time the key detail was even though you'd had a couple of teams and you'd had varying success and obviously you'd left them, there was a situation where all the Casper teams were coming into League of Legends. They were all going to get squads, and so that meant, like, for some of them, they had to buy squads that weren't that good and build them up, like CJ had started to go out and get people.
Oh, man.
Also got people.
No one's going to believe what I say. I know what you're going to.
So the story at the time was, if you'd wanted, you could have just made one of these teams. You could have just been the leader, and maybe you could have picked the players, but instead you did this really weird move where you went to America and you became the support and joined CLG, and people know that didn't really work out that well. So at the time you made it sound like you said some really like anime type line, like I had bad memories, and that's what made me have to leave Korea. Was it just something simple, like something like a girl and some problem with that made you have to leave? What could have happened? Could you have just stayed and been like the SK Telecom leader or something?
It's funny you mentioned that because the team that gave me an offer to start their team was SKT, and the SKT head coach actually says that in an interview where like Loco didn't go with us, and we thought like the team wouldn't work out, and we hesitated like going into the scene even, and yeah, like I mean SKT gave me an offer to like build their team, and like I went to their offices and everything, and there was a coach that I really wanted to work with, and I really wanted to bring on that coach, but they already had a coach that they wanted, and I mean me and Double were really good friends back then. I would say like one of my closest friends even. We're not as close nowadays, and like I was just like really upset at a lot of the things that happened in Korea, and I blamed it on like just the Korean culture more so than like myself, and I thought like going to CLG would solve a lot of problems, and I mean of course it didn't, because I mean problems were with me as much as it were with the people around me. So yeah, like I naively like just declined all offers from Korea, and started the SKT Empire. And I just joined CLG.
So when you joined CLG and you became a support player, since you were someone who'd played with these other support players and helped them rise, etc., and the storyline there was that you were someone who knew how the lane should be played, etc. Why did it go so badly?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like I didn't initially join to be a support. Double told me that I could play solo lanes, and I really did want to play solo lanes, and like the infamous joke is like Loco came and he never like duoed with Double, and all he did was like play solo lanes because they told me I could be a solo lane, and I wasn't allowed to be a solo laner and I had to play support, so I wasn't very interested or had my whole heart in it, and I just like was kind of just there.
Okay, so that's interesting because when you say that, that links to another thing you told me once, which was, so when you say you could play solo lanes, well, obviously the key position that they'd swapped around a whole bunch in CLG and later on would be available is top lane, Hotshot's position, because he'd swapped to jungle when they had Voyboy. Obviously, they got rid of Voyboy around the time that you came and joined. Later on, Hotshot retired the next year anyway. Now, that might sound weird to people why you'd become a top laner, but wasn't there also some other storyline around a similar period of time where you had also, because you were such good friends with Lost Boy from Blaze.
Oh man, you know everything. How do you know?
Mate, I have a good memory for things. Wasn't there also some mad story where you might have been like top laner of Blaze as well? So was Loco maybe going to be a top laner for CLG or Blaze?
Yeah, I mean, I also tried out to be top lane for Blaze. On air said it would be really awkward for Frost and also like the Blaze members involved, and they like tried out a lot of people, and when they didn't go with me, like they actually didn't have a lot of options, and they just ended up like picking up Flame like almost like out of the blue. And I mean, yeah. Did I ever tell you that? Like, how'd you know? Only me and Lust would know.
Listen, mate, I remember things I'm told.
Okay.
When they're key details. Okay, so yeah, you did tell me a while ago.
Okay.
So after CLG
Yeah.
was when you went back and you joined NaJin. Now, it's funny, the reason why the story goes like that, because like you say, part of the reason you couldn't get on a Blaze is because obviously people in Frost maybe still had, bad feelings about how it ended. The coach at that point in time maybe also didn't trust that, all the behavioral things would get fixed out, etc. So you would think it would be even less likely that you could join NaJin, right? Because this is literally where, okay, you're going to join NaJin Shield, admittedly, and Soldier's on, McNoon's on, but he was still a superstar, and he just won OGN. So you think if anyone in history has veto power, it's got to be McNoon at this moment, right? So how did you get into NaJin Shield?
I mean, me and like, oh man, fuck, people aren't also going to believe me, but the current NaJin Shield AD at the time was Bang. And to get into the team, I had to scrim against Prey and Kane, the best bot lane in Korea, and I beat him pretty handedly. And then another AD I was scrimming, against, or like screaming as a rival to get in, was Deft. So coincidentally, they're the three best AD carries in Korea right now, Prey, Deft, and Bang. But I beat Prey in scrims, and I replaced Bang, and I performed better than Deft in scrims to get into NaJin Shield. I mean, with all the odds stacked against me, and like McNoon not liking me, I was still the best choice. Like I mean, people probably won't believe it, but I was really good when I tried. And those are the three ADs I beat out to be able to join that team. Okay.
So there was a story I remember. I think you actually maybe made a little video on this topic where just before that was this bizarre situation, or was it afterwards? When was the scenario where you made that team that was like,
oh, the
Mata, Dade, Benge, at the time, basically a bunch of people who weren't super famous, but obviously, immediately after that became super famous and world champions, etc. So, what was that? Just before this?
Yeah, that was right before that.
Right, okay. And what was the central reason as to why it didn't happen, though? I mean, I remember that the basic story, right, was you had a little group of people, you were friends with some of them, right?
So on my end days at CLG, I got to stay at the Curse house because I had some time left over on my visa, and I wanted to just enjoy America a little bit more. And Steve let me stay at the Curse house, and I met some of the Curse EU people, and they were interested in sponsoring a Korean team. And so I sort of made my own team, and they backed out at last moment. I mean, jokes on them. It would have been me, Bengi, Mata. I think it would have been Yoongi, and who would have the mid been? I think it might have been Dade. Yeah, it was probably Dade. So yeah, that would have been our team. We would have been Beast. Samsung White wouldn't exist. SKT wouldn't exist. Samsung Blue wouldn't exist. I mean, they wouldn't exist in their the forms that they actually were. Because we had key players from each team. That team would have been Beast.
Okay. And it was just because the sponsor pulled out, basically. It didn't happen.
Infamously, me and Mata duoed a lot, and then we were on that team. And this is a famous Mata story that I don't think I told anyone. We went to the finals with me, Mata, and Corn Salad. We were just really close, the three of us. And we went to the finals versus, I think it was like NaJin Thor versus Frost. And then I was telling Mara, yo, that's my old team. And the other team, like NaJin, like that was the team I started also. I started both team. And then he was like, whoa, that's so cool. And then he was like, you know, next season, I'm going to be on that stage. And I was like, okay, cool story, bro. Cool story, bro. And Mara joined MVP White, and he actually was on that stage very next season. So
Indeed. So, okay. When I told the story about you and MadLife, and I pointed out, okay, the difference is, Cod's MadLife is a very mannered, polite person.
Yeah.
He doesn't like BM you when I did my interview them, but he just said, like, you know, maybe some of it was exaggerated or whatever. Now, Mata is a pretty BM person, and he, when I interviewed him, just basically did BM you. Like, he made it sound like, oh, he had nothing to do with me being good, you know, like, you knew him a long time ago, you know. What was your actual relationship like with him? I mean, he was obviously, the key thing about him people won't realize is he was a rookie when he won OGN. You know, he's a very, very new player. So what was the young Mata like before he became the superstar of 1 year?
Super cocky. Mata was extremely cocky. He knew the game really well, and he had his own idea of playing. His idea regarding playing around vision and playing around priority is pretty standard now, but he had a very, very clear point of view on how he wanted to play the game and how he shot call. He didn't know a lot of basics about laning, and his laning always was like not that great. So I got to teach him a lot about laning and working together with your AD and gaining priority. I definitely taught Mata less than I taught MadLife.
Okay.
I will say this, in Korean interviews, Mata has said different things about me teaching him. So I mean,
fair enough.
But those were also earlier interviews where I guess Mata's head wasn't as big.
Okay, so the player that you got to play, since you mentioned that you had Bang, you had to compete to get in the team. Well, you're supporting this team. I mean, funny enough, he wasn't even called Wolfie, he was called A-Wolf. You know, that's like what a lame nickname he had. Now people might start to realize, you know, when we did that Thorn versus, why was Loco standing up for Wolf so much? He thinks he's the best now. What was Wolf like back then?
I want to preface this by saying my two supports were Wolf and Gorilla, and people are going to think, holy shit, like, damn, Loco, you sucked it up hard if your supports were Wolf and Gorilla. But these were, like, very, very, like, baby steps, like, of their career, so they were nowhere near as good. Wolf was just very instinctual and not very smart. I think I did teach Wolf some stuff, but Wolf's greatest teacher was Goma more so than me. Wolf was just not a very refined support back then.
What about Gorilla then? Because the key thing about Gorilla is this just shows how long League of Legends has gone on. I mean, there's people now who could actually maybe make a case that they think Gorilla's the best support player ever, you know, because obviously he had a fantastic career at the end of NaJin and then going into his time in Rox Tigers. So what was Gorilla like?
Gorilla was very friendly, very sociable. He was very good about getting information from people, not in like a malicious way. He just was like friendly and talked to a lot of people, so he would absorb a lot of information and he would exchange a lot of information. He was very easy to work with, and he was a rising support, and like he wasn't like amazing at a lot of things. He was just like good to average at a lot of things, but he was very easy to work with and listened very well and was very sociable.
Okay. So in the next chapter was where you came to NA again, and you were in a team called Quantic, and this was the one where I actually feel like the real story on this one's never properly been told, and it was very unfair because the problem is, Loco, when you made this team, okay, most of the players, it was all scouted players, right? Like nearly none of these players went on to have really good careers afterwards. Like people will know a few of them, you know, maybe. Like, I mean, like Gunza went back to Blaze very briefly afterwards.
Gunza, Apple.
Yeah, Apple like very briefly played in LCK as well, but none of them went on to great things afterwards. But, you know, there was some talents there, but it was like a very raw squad. And you were the main name, along with Woong, obviously, initially, when you made the team together. Now, the part people don't remember is, and my theory on this is, because in the interviews, you did a lot of trash talking to get attention, you know, and to hype it up, etc. Because the team didn't qualify, people want the storyline to be like, oh, well, since Loco talked trash, like, haha, he didn't qualify, he must have sucked. But if you go and look, that team actually was doing very well in the Challenger scene. You had, like, dominating records in all the leagues. When it came to the section, which involved trying to qualify, basically to get into the promotion matches, your team was doing really well up until a specific point where you had all these internet problems at the LAN cafe and you didn't get in. So I realize you often haven't talked about this because people made such a big deal about it being such a failure, etc. How do you describe the Quantic period? Like, what was the aim? Was it something that could have worked?
It definitely could have worked. We were definitely good enough. And a lot of things come back to, like, I was mature enough to work with like teammates back then. Like I was finally like mature enough to like lead people and like guide them the right way. I wasn't mature enough to deal with people being babies or like people like just giving up and like people being like unmotivated. Like there was a time where I was like team obliviator. Like I was like the one that was hard to work with, but it came to a point where I could like work with people and get people around. But like it's like Woong and Suno, like man, they were the bane of my life. Like they caused me so much problems. They Woong cried and moaned about so many things, and so did Suno. Like the team was like held together by strings. That was another point in my life. If I was more mature and had even more leadership skills, like probably like that was like in other instances, I feel like man, I was like really immature and I should have been more mature. But that's the one instance where I feel like, hey, I was like pretty mature and I was pretty smart and I was pretty knowledgeable for my age, but I had to be even extra leadership, extra mature, and extra smart to like get it through. I don't want to like bad talk a lot of people, but I do want to say like I was very mature and I was a good leader at that time. I just wasn't like good enough to deal with like people coming to a new country and like not being able to adapt and like being very depressed and emotional.
So this is obviously before we had regional lockings. This is an all 5-man Korean lineup. Mm-hmm. If this team, and by the Challengers team records, it could have been a possibility. If this team could have made it into LCS, what do you think it would have been like?
What would have been like? It would have been. I mean, we probably would have done pretty decently. To be honest, we probably would have brought on Lustboy very soon, and like before Riot Legion locked, I probably would have brought on Korean players and replaced myself, and we probably would have been a successful like franchise in an LCS team. It's super easy to say that now. Who knows? Like we might have failed somewhere else down the road. I probably wasn't like nowhere near smart or mature enough to be a team owner. I don't know. Like I can be hopeful about it. It's hard for me to really say.
So after this period, obviously, like your playing career ended. Mm-hmm. I notice in your career, every time there's a big like reset point, like you leave a team or you have to find a new team, there's not a new one immediately available, It seemed like every time that happened, you thought about quitting or you thought, should I continue? Or sometimes you did quit, but then, you came back, you made a team. At this point in time, you did quit playing for good and you obviously later on became a coach the next year. Mm-hmm. Why were you always like going in and out of League of Legends? Like, considering you're someone who seems like, if you had a good job now in League of Legends, you might keep playing for many, many years or keep coaching for many, many years. Why, for someone who's been so dedicated to the game, have you had the times where you wanted to just leave entirely?
I think it's part of how I grew up, where I was just taught like video games are bad and playing video games is bad. So like after like video games turn out not so great for me, it's very easy for me to say, okay, video games are bad. Like I should just do what's good. And I eventually come to the realization, like, you really like video games, and like you're in a deep, sick, twisted way, you really do enjoy playing video games for a living and coaching video games for a living, and you do want to be involved in esports. It's a constant internal struggle.
So when you came to become a coach, mm-hmm. was between the period that was like it was the player break, as far as I remember, between the spring split of season 4 and the summer split of season 4, because famously it was where Alliance existed and they'd come like, I think they came 4th in the spring, and then summer season was the one they dominated in, and you were like part coaching them for the first couple of weeks and then part trial coaching TSM, and you were trying to decide between the two which route you were going to go. And obviously people know now you went to TSM and won the season and all the other factors. But what do you think would have happened if you'd have chosen Alliance? Like, were you close to doing that? Were you always kind of leaning towards TSM?
I was close to joining Alliance until TSM made me an offer. Like, I don't think I could have said no to TSM. Not because of the name TSM, actually, more so because of Andy. And like, as I said earlier in this interview, like he really jump-started my career for buying me a computer and paying for my internet. So I was pretty close to joining until TSM said, hey.
So what about as a hypothetical? What if you'd have gone with Alliance instead? Because obviously they went on to be very good that season, I didn't
realize it now, but like looking back now and looking at what's happened, Shook and Wicked, I don't think would have been like very coachable and would have listened to me very much. They listened to me initially because I had good ideas and I was a new point of view, but I don't think they would have listened. Like the more I coached them. While on the other hand, players on TSM, I mean, even with our ups and downs, like Bjergsen at the Like there were definitely times where Bjergsen didn't listen to me, but overall Bjergsen did listen to me, and he was a great player to have. And like Froggen definitely was very strong-headed, and he was also had more experience than Bjergsen, and probably was more set in his ways than Bjergsen. So I don't think I would have been able to make as great of an impact on Alliance. And also like it's kind of a shot at Leviathan. If Leviathan can get Alliance to win EU, I mean I'm sure I could have also, and it probably would have been pretty meaningless to coach a team that could have won as like Leviathan as coach.
Well, okay. So when you became the coach of TSM, you did win the first split, but people might forget it was a very up and down split, because what happened initially was at the beginning of the season there was the whole thing where Xpecial was like benched, and then obviously eventually he transferred to Curse, and then initially it was actually Glebe who came in, and then he had a couple of good games, but as happened in many of his teams, external factors, we'll just say, meant that he could no longer play and had to be replaced. And this is where, out of nowhere, OGN champion, player who's got a lot of accolades, Lost Boy, comes in from Blaze and comes to become the starting support player of TSM. Now, clearly, you obviously were involved in that since you were friends with Lost Boy, etc.
Oh, Andy just did that all by himself.
Okay.
I'm joking.
So yeah, so was it always in the back of your mind to bring Lost Boy over at some point, or had you two to kind of discuss that? At some point we'll be together in NA.
I mean, me and Lost Boy always talked, and I mean, me and Lost Boy even duoed all the way from when he was in Korea. I'll say this about Glebe, without bashing any part of Glebe or like intruding into his personal life. Something happened beyond his gameplay that made it no longer possible for us to play with Glebe, and probably at the end of the split we would have replaced Glebe with Lust, but something happened that made us do it a lot sooner, and we just did it. And it was really risky. I didn't know how much English Lust Boy was going to be able to speak. Things I knew were Lust Boy was very good at the game, Lust Boy was very knowledgeable, Lust Boy very friendly and easy to be around, and also Lust was someone I thought would try really hard for me and also for himself, and he did that. And I mean, he was a great fit. It did come with a lot of risk.
When you went to Worlds that year, it was the one where TSM got its highest placing. It placed in the round of 8, and you obviously had to play the team that won the tournament, Now, I'm sure people are aware that the jungler of that team, Amazing, has like his own kind of let's just say a very optimistic, extremely generous version of what happened, where he thinks that you're really close to this game, and if you'd won this game, you'd have won this other game, and then you'd played someone different, and then you might have beaten it. He has like an extremely optimistic version, right? As the coach of that team, obviously when you played Samsung White, there's not a lot you can do about that, but realistically, what was a placing of 5th to 8th, was that reasonable for that TSM team?
Definitely, I do think we could have made it out of groups. If he beat RNG in our final game, I do think...
No, this is the wrong year, mate. We're talking about Season 4. That's the one where you were in the group with SK Gaming and you got out in second. Oh, yeah, right. You mean if you'd have won in the... Yes,
yeah,
okay,
if he
sorry.
beat Royal and we got first seeding and we didn't have to play the first seeded teams, I do think we could have gotten out of the groups. Or gotten out of round of 8. I mean, I don't really blame Amazing that much for saying it, because we did do really well in scrims, and to all of us, like, it felt really unfair that we had to play Samsung White, like, who was like the clear favorites, while we played really well in scrims and we did well in groups. And I mean, also, like, a lot of things felt unfair because we also were like in really good connections with Samsung White, and they gave us a bunch of scrims, and they told us they would continue giving us scrims if we didn't have to play them. So we felt like, oh man, this path is laid out front of us. Like, we learned so much from Samsung White, and then now, like, with this knowledge, we can beat whatever team we meet in round of 8, and then we'll get to scrim them more, and then we'll take more knowledge from them, and then we'll win round of 4, and then hopefully we can make finals. So, like, in our heads, like, there was a path, like, we could make it, and I do see why Amazing would say that.
Why do you think then that at every single Worlds, if I went through each one year by year, there's always a number 1 or number 2 like ranked Western team that comes in, where the story is they all did really great in scrims and maybe even won games off the team that eventually won the tournament, and yet obviously none of them ever go on to win Worlds? Is there some reason why Western teams don't play as well in the tournament as they did in scrims, or Korean teams played worse in the scrims and better in the tournament? Do you have a theory as to why?
I mean, Korean take scrims slightly less seriously. I mean, that's been, I guess it's been less true, but back then NA took like scrims like, oh my god, we need to win. And Koreans were like, chill out, like we're just here to play and chill, like let's see what you guys got. So that's why NA teams like they actually did do well in scrims, and it just doesn't translate onto stage. Korean teams were more chill about it. And I mean, Koreans are better, and they're better in where they're really, really better is mid game and snowballing and not making mistakes. They play really clean and really systematically, and they have 5 players that know how the game should be played, and they're vocal, and they also play very unified. And that's where like the difference is. So, I mean, Korean teams are better, so they do better than Western teams. Like, I mean, what's new?
Okay, so the best period of your coaching career should probably be the spring of season 5, because this was the one where you won the LCS again, but this time, in more dominant fashion.
I disagree completely.
Okay.
I would say the summer of the year before, where we won my first year coaching TSM, and the year I coached TL with 3 rookies were the best coaching seasons of my career. For the coaching season with TSM the first time, I don't think any coach could have made the roster replacement that I did and coached the team and gotten TSM to beat C9. I don't think there was any coach that could have done that. I brought in new knowledge. I brought in a new system. I brought in new picks, new strategy, and I also brought a support player only that I had access to. So I think, yeah, like I got a team that wasn't supposed to place first to place first.
Okay. But in season 5 spring anyway, you won LCS, you went to the IEM tournament and won that. Obviously, MSI we can just ignore, but in theory, you had a lot of success at that one period of time.
I did have success, but I was riding on the backs of like the base frames that were created, and also Andy and Bjerg being very competent. For spring, like that roster compared to also like our biggest rival was like CLG, which was dysfunctional as hell, and C9. That was like the infamous like High and Meteos like not getting a long split, and like that was a split like where High retired afterwards. So our competition wasn't very good, and I just had like I had almost the best players or the second best player in each role. So I don't think like that split was very impressive in terms of coaching. I think the players I had and the organization I won carried me more so than I carried them.
Okay, so the IEM tournament that you won is the one where it had a lot of good teams in it. Like a lot of the top Western teams were there. Cloud9 was there. SK Gaming at the time was the best team in Europe, Obviously, Flash Wolves were there. You had a bunch of different teams. And then famously, at the time, the number 1 Korean team was also there, GE Tigers, because the split hadn't finished, they hadn't lost that final. So everyone thought, they're the number 1 team, they're going to win. Now, obviously, it's a little bit bizarre because you won the tournament, but you never actually got to play GE Tigers because they got upset by World Elite. Mm-hmm. How do you actually think of that tournament? Because on the one hand, it's not the same as winning like a Worlds, even if it has very good teams. And then it's also very difficult in as much as you didn't actually get to beat the number 1 team there, but you still can only play the teams you play. How do you think of that tournament? Like, is it your best accomplishment? Where do you put it?
I mean, we got lucky, and we got lucky to a certain extent, and we were very good. I think we were probably on our best day, we could beat every team, and on our worst day, we were probably like the second or the third best team at the tournament. It was very like fortunate for us for World Elite to knock out GE Tigers. Definitely, the GE Tigers would have been a harder opponent. I don't know, like for me, other than the first split with TSM, it's really hard to like flaunt my accomplishment as TSM coach because the organization is so good, and I do think other coaches would have done pretty well. Maybe not as well as me, but they would have done pretty well. Only the first split in TSM, I think I made a real difference as like a coach, and I could say like without me that split, there was no way they win first. But in spring split, like they probably would have gotten first without me if someone had like Lustboy and the other 4 players that they had. And in summer, someone probably else, some other person could have probably gotten second. And also Andy did play a big part in coaching in the 2 splits that I mentioned. And for IEM, like I mean, we did well because GE Tigers got knocked out. So for like I'm just not as proud of those like accomplishments as I should be, like because I had very like competent people around me.
What was Reginald's role in these seasons as a coach?
I mean Regi, you always make fun of Regi. You're like, Regi's strategy is like so outdated. Like Regi's so old school, blah blah blah. I mean, Regi, like while some of it might be outdated, he has a clear idea on how he wants the team to play, and he's really good at unifying the team. I think that's like really big. Like cutting like all the bullshit and the different opinions people might have, and like unifying the team to play a single way. And it's just really good to play in one direction and have like the same goal as a team. So I think that's what Regi's really good at, and that's where I got the most help from Regi. Like I wanted to do a lot of things, some things that weren't great, some things that weren't good, like bad, and I wanted to do things. Some things were good, some things were bad. Andy came in and he's like, okay, we're just gonna do this, and everyone just did that. While that might not have been the best thing to do, it was a good enough thing to do to NA to win NA, and everyone did exactly that.
So in season 5 summer, the one where you guys lost to CLG, this is the one where part of the problem is because there was the reality series, people got all these like very weird fragments, you know, of behind the scenes, and which everyone obviously took a lot of extreme, just drew a lot of conclusions from, you know, and thought that they'd kind of figured out which players were the problem or where the coach was an issue. And obviously a theme of that season of the reality show was the idea that like was Reginald like having to step in too much, and then obviously eventually like in theory kept like you weren't quite the head coach at the end, and then people wondered if there was tension with Bjergsen. What went on with all of that, and was any of that stuff present in seasons past?
I don't think it's like my place to like dish out all of that. I'll just say which part I think are appropriate and relevant to the video. I mean, me and Bjergsen did have clashes. I was kind of immature, and Bjergsen acted immature back at me because he's also young, and also you don't want to be coached by an immature person. And because I was immature, like Andy wasn't like very happy with me, and he did have to step in. People get very small clips from TSM Legends. Like there's like 24 hours in the day. We sleep 8 of those hours. And let's say 2 of those hours are free time. So there's like 14 hours like I'm interacting with the players and like working. Out of those 14 hours, like 14 times 7, that's like 98. So let's round up to 100 hours. And TSM Legends is what, like 30 minutes long? So it's like 0.5% of, it's not even 1% of all the things, it's 0.5% of all the interactions that are shown. So if you can really paint an accurate picture of 0.5% of all the time there were interactions, then I mean that person is a god. I mean, I do think some of TSM Legends were accurate, but it was also about telling a story. So unfortunately, the story that was told wasn't like all that positive towards me. Some rightfully so, some wrongfully so. So and a lot of people made judgments off of TSM Legends. So I mean, it's whatever to me. Some of the parts are true, some of the parts are exaggerated, and some of the parts are just part of storytelling.
When TSM as a team were losing in LCS and there were problems with the team, like maybe players didn't feel like they were being used the right way or whatever, was it tough for you in those moments, like to have authority, to feel like you were the coach, or to have people respect you as the coach?
I mean, yeah, I mean, partly because I was immature, and also partly, like in a way, like everyone does know, like in TSM, like Andy is in charge. I mean, I'll say this about Andy. Andy supported me fully at the start, and as I messed up more and more, he became more and more in charge. So, were things like super fair? Like, I mean, nothing in the world is ever super fair to every party involved. It is what it is. I guess what kind of direct answers would you want? Like instead of, and then I can just be like, yeah, that happened. Yeah, that didn't happen. Or like, no, I don't feel comfortable talking about that.
That's fine. Just say it like that if you want, mate.
Okay. What are some like? Yeah, I mean, ask me direct questions, and I'll just give you direct answers, or I'll say I don't feel comfortable talking about it.
About TSM?
Yeah.
I think that answers it pretty well. The basic topic was just that one of the things people wondered about from TSM Legends is that the mixture of the fact that Reginald stepped in and the fact that a lot of obviously he mainly showed like the arguments people had, you know, when the games were lost, just made it sound like you'd lost control of the team, you know, like even if you had, like maybe your idea was wrong or maybe it was right, but it sounded like people just weren't buying into the notion of what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, that part sounds pretty true.
Okay. Was it already the case after that summer split when you guys lost to CLG? Was that really kind of, was the end already clear at that point in time? Would you already have had to leave after Worlds? Were you already in a position where you weren't like the full head coach and going into next year? Or if you'd have gotten like a nice Worlds group and you'd had an upset or something, was there a way back, do you think, at that point in time?
I mean, me and Doublelift didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and it was pretty clear Doublelift was going to join afterwards, like towards the end. And I did have options to stay on TSM as a different role. I really did want to do content. For some reason, everyone thinks it's like so bullshit that I wanted to do content, and it was like a cop out for me, like of not being head coach. But I mean, at the time, I really did not like coaching, and I did want to do content. And my plan was to stay and do content on TSM. And then with Double joining, things were not so favorable. And what is it? I decided to look for different teams, and not a lot of teams wanted content creators. A lot of teams wanted coaches. So I had to either be okay with very low pay, a lot less than what I was making initially, and I guess I wasn't too okay with that.
Okay. Obviously, at Season 5 Worlds, TSM got what was basically, it was pretty much the hardest group it was possible to get at the time, you know, because even the wildcard team was fucking Origin or whatever, you know, well, whatever, it's Pool 3, you know, it wasn't technically wild, but the wildcards were in Pool 3. So basically, it was pretty much the hardest group you could possibly get from your position.
Yeah.
With that said, what do you make of what happened at Worlds?
I think it played out how it should have played out. We played as well as we didn't play out of our minds. We didn't play terribly. We played at our level, and we placed at our level.
When you came on Summoning Insight, why did you say that Santorin had 9.5 out of 10 level mechanics for a jungler?
I mean, I still to this day think Santorin has really, really good mechanics, and his flaws aren't in his mechanics. It's more so sometimes not being as aggressive as he needs to be, or risk assessment. I still think Santorin has like extremely good mechanics. Probably nowadays I won't say like 9.5 out of 10, but I still stand by the statement that Santorin has extremely good mechanics.
Okay. So as you mentioned there, when you joined Team Liquid, it was actually as a content creator. And by the way, I can't remember how much of this has officially ever been said, but I know some basic details have, which is basically that Team Liquid, this is the reason why it's not bullshit, because Team Liquid already did have a coach when you joined the team as a content creator. They had a guy who was from another sport in the past, it just didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, then yes, they needed a coach sort of literally last minute, and you're literally an ex-coach and you're the content creator, so it makes sense, at least in the short term, to give this a try. Now, with all of that said, do you think it's the fact that the first split went so well that meant that it even continued on from there?
I mean, I want to say this. Like, I'm really proud of what I accomplished that split, and I'm really proud of the players. I mean, Dardoch included. For some reason, me and Dardoch don't get along. Like, that's like not a bullshit, but I will give credit where it's due. That split, I had 3 rookies and 2 imports, Piglet and Phoenix, that did not work well with like the NA players they had before. And we managed to get 4th, and we brought CLG to a game 5. And honestly, like I do personally think like we should have won that series. I thought like that was one of the best coaching jobs like I've done personally, and like that has been done in the West. I think like I'm probably missing a few people, but I think there's very few times where there's a team and they're like supposed to place at a certain point. You know, I think Tony with Pobelter, Xmithy, Doublelift, Zion, and Afro, that lineup, I don't think that lineup should have done well. Pobelter and Xmithy were like leftover players from other orgs, like that CLG picked up, and Doublelift and Afro weren't as well developed, and Zion wasn't very good. And Tony coached them up to a point, along with Chris and Weldon, where they got first at NALCS. Like, I don't think that team should have placed that highly. The split, I came into TSM with like Galib, Amazing, Bjerg, Turtle, and Dyrus. I don't think that team should have gotten first. And I mean, I sort of cheated like by bringing in Lustboy, but that was out of my like own accord, own connections, own talent, and we placed first. Even with just that roster, without the coaching, I don't think that roster could have placed first, and I coached that team to place first. Fnatic with Daler and Huni Rainover and the 3 like the EU players in Yellowstar, I don't think like that team should have done that well, and like Daler got them to a point that like placed first. That
Okay.
split with the TL rookies and Phoenix and Piglet, I don't think that was a team that could have placed fourth or taken CLG to game 5 without like really, really good coaching. So I'm really extremely proud of what I accomplished that split, and also I'm really proud of what the players accomplished that split.
What were your strengths as a coach at the time?
It's still my strengths. Like I teach basics of the game really well, and I have a very clear idea on how I want the game to be played, and I'm very good at recognizing what pieces I have and how to fit them together.
The second split was obviously the one which people now most famously know for Breaking Point. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, it's kind of genius because since the split went so badly, it was the only way to get something out of it that people were interested in watching, you know. And so it was a way to almost like save what was otherwise a terrible split. Now, I know you're one of the people who feels hard done by that documentary. Like, you feel like it didn't represent all the, like, the way you were as a coach, and maybe it made you look like, not necessarily the villain, but it definitely made you look like the bitch. Like, you were just the one who was getting wrecked in all the scenarios, and like there wasn't a lot of kind of comebacks, you know. And yes, it's true that Dardoch comes off looking the worst of everyone in the whole thing, but
I don't think honestly, but
yeah.
the thing is, I don't think that's their intent, because I do think like their intent is to make Dardoch look good as possible and make me look bad as possible. Because what's a trade value of a rookie jungler that did extremely well versus a coach that does really well? I think coach has like very little trade value, and I mean, Team Liquid I think wanted to probably trade Dardoch and what is it? Either keep or trade Dardoch, and in either case, they do want his value to be high as possible. And if they have to sacrifice between his value being high and my value being high, I think it makes natural business sense to make sure my value is low and Dardoch's value is high. And I mean, they ended up trading Dardoch to Immortals, and I'm sure they got a good amount of cash for it. So I think it makes perfect sense that Breaking Point was portrayed to make me look worse and Dardoch look better.
In what sense did it make you look worse, though? What, like, with, we're not asking for literally all the specific moments and times, but what was the basic gist of what they missed?
I thought it took very, very specific parts where Dardoch acted immature, and then it posted those parts, and then like him yelling, and then there were a lot of times where I was mature about things and like try to calm Dardoch, and all those parts were like Mia, and it told a very specific story.
Okay.
Like it was even worse than TSM Legend in terms of like the hours that gets invested into like what happened to like what's shown. Like TSM Legend, if it was like 0.5%, like when we did the math of like the times of interaction and what was shown, like Breaking Point is like the entire season into like an hour 30 or 2 hour movie.
Do you think that that documentary damaged your ability to potentially get other coaching jobs or how people thought you in the industry?
I still had LCS coaching offers afterwards. So I mean, it did damage my rep and stuff, but I don't think people can deny my accomplishments or like my accolades as a coach or my talents or my knowledge or my relationships. So I mean, it did damage it, but I still had LCS offers. So I mean, it kind of sucked, but it is what it is.
Right, ignoring everything that has happened with Dardoch in Immortals and in CLG and whatever else, at that exact moment in time, how would you have described Dardoch as a player?
Oh man, this is so dangerous. I saw a lot of me in Dardoch when I was younger. Very angsty, angry, like quick to get angry at people, and like felt like other people were out to get me. Felt like I would do better with better teammates, with better coaching. That's how I felt. I saw a lot of me, a lot of frustration, a lot of teenage angst. What's to say? Yeah.
Were there times that you got through to him? Do you ever feel like you ever were on the same page?
Definitely, there were times. Dardoch's like a very like emotional person, so there were definitely times where we were like hugged it out, and then like we were chill, and then we moved on to doing like well again, and then like things would explode again. It was very roller coaster. It was very up and down.
Did you have a different vision for how Team Liquid should play than him? I mean, it does seem a lot like he's someone where he obviously wanted to play his style, and if that wasn't going to happen, then he seemed to just lose faith instantly in everything that went wrong.
Dardoch wanted to play very aggressive, very fight heavy. I wanted to play more priority and more vision control oriented. I mean, yeah, we did have different points of view on how the game should be played, definitely.
Okay. Was Dardoch as good as he thought he was?
Mm, uh, I think reality of young stars are they're never as good as they think they are. And this is not like a shot at Dardoch, this is just shot at like this is just the truth of like young players that become very good very quickly. Like you think you know a lot more and you think you're better than you actually are.
Okay, so back at that time, Piglet was a very good AD carry, especially obviously within the context of NA. In theory, if you have this young rookie who, is way better than even a rookie probably should be at the time, is very good in terms of Dardoch, and you have Piglet who's an established carry, very experienced, etc. Sure, I can understand players might not get along and they might have a different vision for the game, but did those two players really just never understand the concept that, like, if there's one person in the team I have to try and get along with, this other guy, because the two of us are what in theory can carry this team to be better than they are, or usually the thing about star players is they at least want another star player on the team. They want someone else who they think can. It's not just them doing it all. Could they never kind of see eye to eye in that sense?
They definitely saw eye to eye in a lot of things, and they loved each other at points, and they were inseparable, and they just played well with each other, and they supported each other. It's just when things weren't bad, neither was mature enough to handle it well, and I wasn't like mature enough to guide it well.
Okay. So one of the players that was in that team who you then got to reconnect with later was obviously Fenix, because he came over with you to Goldcoin United. Now, he was a player who he wasn't featured that much in Breaking Point, but there was like a scene that really stood out to me, which is the one where he got like incredibly frustrated, and he was basically saying like, like no one in the team sort of tries or fucking does anything that he says, and it just seemed like he seemed like that lineup was a nightmare for him. What is he like as a player, and what has it been like working with him in Team Liquid and now in Goldcoin United?
Phoenix is very passionate, and Phoenix is very good. Phoenix is also, I wouldn't say like the most mature players. Phoenix is actually quite a bit older than most people would think, but his behavior and like his mannerisms are very young. I would say he's like a very like a cheery, talented player.
Okay. When you came over to make the Goldcoin United team, in your mind, is there any connection between trying to do that and what you did in Quantic? Like, was there any concern about, oh, maybe I don't want to go on a challenger? Because obviously the big problem, right, is the same thing can happen to anyone. You could have an amazing run in challenger. It's happened to a few teams, actually. Everything was looking awesome. In scrims, they do well against the LCS teams, but then you don't make it, which is obviously what did end up happening at the end of this first attempt. Was there anything... Why go into that project again? Why kind of risk it?
I'll say something, and you can't ask me about it further, okay?
Okay. You want me to delete what you've just said out of the video, yeah?
No, you can put this in.
Okay, sure, okay.
There's something I can't have by joining an LCS team as a head coach that I could have by joining a challenger team as a head coach and making it into LCS. So I really wanted
think people can figure that out, okay.
And I was able to get that.
Okay. So even if, obviously it'd have to be a hypothetical, but even if, like, say, the third best team in LCS had offered you a spot, you would have taken this particular different route that might have its own benefits over getting a top coaching spot again.
I'm confident enough. Once I'm in LCS, or once I'm back in LCS, like one way or the other, like I'll be able to coach a team to the top level.
Okay. So in Goldcoin United, you got to reconnect with MadLife again. He came over and joined the team. And obviously that was a big storyline because you'd spent many years apart. Now, the MadLife you got back was obviously very different than the one that you left initially, because in the meantime he had his fantastic career, but also a lot of people thought his career had kind of whimpered out, like he wasn't a dominant player anymore. Obviously his teams weren't very good by the end, Where's MadLife been at by the time he came to Goldcoin United? Like, what do you think his problems were? Has he resolved them now?
I think a lot of his problem came from like self-confidence and also like the teammates that he had. CJ wasn't a very good, there aren't like really general managers, but they're not really good about like putting the right players next to him. So I do think MadLife had some issues. Like most of them, like MadLife didn't have big issues. MadLife has been the single most easiest player for me to ever work with.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, like he he was a lot more knowledgeable, he was a lot more wise, and he was a lot more prone to talking back at me than when we were first playing together. But it's been a lot of fun working with him.
As we kind of discussed in the interview, with all the different locations you were in and all the even different positions you've played, and now being a player and then a coach and then different continents you lived on, are you someone who now thinks of yourself like, if as long as you have coaching jobs and the places are available, if League of Legends lasted 20 years, say it was like a traditional sport,
Oh
are
God.
you someone who could be like a lifer? Could you just be involved in it somehow for your whole career? Is that something you could envision?
Man, when I was young, there were so many things I wanted to do. Pro gaming was one of them, but there are so many things I didn't get to do, and I still feel like I haven't made a big of a mark in League of Legends as I have. Um, Also, if I am never able to make that mark, I'll probably be in it for life because I probably won't feel like I'm done with League of Legends until I've like crafted a serious part of it and like made my mark on it. But if I do make my mark in like the next 5 years, I could see myself moving away.
Okay. So when you first joined TSM as a coach was when there barely were coaches. Like Monty was there. I'm trying to think if there was many others at the time. There was maybe like one or two other coaches in any of the LCSs at the time. So at the time, the requirements for coaching were very, very simple. In fact, at the time, some of the coaches even played basically like a mini analyst role. Like some of them didn't even really get to do the coaching element of living in the house and dealing with players, etc. So obviously coaching has evolved a lot over the seasons. How do you think you have coped season to season in terms of evolving as a coach? Are you someone where you think of yourself as you are a head coach? Are you like a coach who also does a bit of analysis, a strategical coach? How do you think of yourself?
I do everything. I do a lot. I do a lot of GMing. I do even some of the content. I do a lot of the coaching. I think my weaknesses are like dealing with players. Like that, I wouldn't say I'm terrible at it. I would say I'm like average to above average at it. But I'm far better at other parts of coaching, and those are parts that I'm working on. I do view myself as a head coach because I really don't like being second in command.
So, as we kind of discussed before, the timing of when you left TSM was when Doublelift joined TSM.
Mm-hmm.
And in TSM, he was very successful, and actually a lot of people mark that as maybe it was the best period of his career.
Mm-hmm.
What do you actually, since he's someone who's been a friend of yours a long time, and then a rival, and then an enemy, and then maybe you could have coached him, and it's all, you basically, your two careers sort of either are intertwined or they run parallel. What do you make of him? Because he's one of the other few players, obviously, who was around since the very beginning, who actually potentially is one of the better players still. So how would you describe Doublelift to people?
I wouldn't say Doublelift is very smart. I think Doublelift had more successful career than me. He was more determined, and he was smarter than me in places that I wasn't. And I do think like he's someone with a lot of grit, and it takes a lot of determination to get to where Doublelift is. I think if I was given the same opportunities as Doublelift, I would have not been anywhere near as successful. The part I appreciate about Doublelift is like he's able to have an extended career and be successful at it and keep working at it and keep a good balance and stuff. Right? He's a very rare case in NA, and I do think he's the best NA-born player along with like High.
Does it frustrate you or irritate you at all that the actual playing part of your career, when you were an AD carrying, when you were in career, etc., most people either don't know about it or they just write it off, or they try to make it into a joke, like, oh, he was never good, it was just MadLife, what those sorts of, does that irritate you at all?
It does irritate me a lot. But as I gotten older, I started to care less and less about what other people think and been more focused on how I feel about myself. It irritates me because it irritates because I know I could have done more, not because other people say stuff about it.
So, okay, in a similar vein then, as a coach, yes, you got Lost Boy, and yes, Reginald was there helping, etc. But if people, like I said, if you notice, fans in general do this a lot because what they try to do is find a very simple answer, okay? Like they want to know a very simple reason as to why something happened or why something kept happening. So one of the things people will say is like, okay, yeah, you won these LCS titles, etc., but you had Bjergsen all the time, and Bjergsen was maybe the best player in LCS. What would you say to that?
Did Bjergsen win every single final he played in?
No.
That's what I would say. Bjergsen is an extremely good player, and he's probably the most valuable player in NA right now, but Bjergsen does need help around him.
Is Bjergsen actually as good as, like, put it this way,
Faker?
there's no point ever saying Faker, because obviously he's like the ridiculous one where no one really is, you know, like maybe someone like Crown might be, but for, you know, like 3 months, you know, so there's no point really in discussion. But if you take Faker out of the discussion and you look at all the different years Bjergsen played, the other really good mids, is he actually as good as them and just doesn't have as good teammates or isn't as good a system? Does he have his own strengths and flaws that we don't see if we're outside of the team? How do you describe him in that sense?
I think some of Bjergsen's growth is limited because he plays in NA, but in terms of like his ability to learn and his determination and the talent, I think he has what it takes to be the best player. The environment around him, it's not that TSM is a bad org. TSM is the best org in NA. That's just not good enough to beat international competition right now. I think Bjergsen is an extremely well-rounded player. I think Jensen's better than him in lane. I think there were at times Fenix was better than him in lane and better than him at team fighting. I think there were times where certain people were better than Bjergsen at roaming, certain people were better than Bjergsen at shot calling. But Bjergsen like works on his weaknesses really well, and he knows what he needs to work on, and he's just a very complete and a well-rounded player.
So as an outsider who obviously has never been involved with TSM, so I have no idea about the personal relationships, you know, day to day within Bjergsen's lineups. Just an outsider's perspective, one thing that always seemed to be lacking in his teams was either he had to be the shot caller or he had to take some part in it, you know. So he could never be that player where, you know, you're the superstar mid laner and someone else does the shot calling and you do your job, but then you do a job that someone else, you know, they direct what you do beyond just winning the lane, for example. How would you describe Bjergsen's involvement with the shot calling? Has it been difficult for him?
It was initially, like, Bjergsen argued to me all the time about shot calling. I really wanted him to shot call, and then he would be like, mids never shot call. Like, give me an example of a mid laner that shot called and that won a championship. And I would always give him the example of Song from NaJin. He won when he was a shot caller, high from C9, and he would say stuff like, shot caller, it's so hard to shot call when you're behind. I'm like, high shot calls from behind all the time. He's not a great laner. At first, like, he really hated and he really disliked being the shot caller. And as more and more so, because Bjergsen's someone that wants to be in control of his own destiny. I mean, that's why he came to NA, right? Because he knew it'd be a better opportunity for him. Like, innately, like, he's someone that wants to be in control and be the best. And he realizes to do that, sometimes he is going to have to shot call. And right now, like, League of Legends, it's not... We've moved far past like one shot caller or two shot callers. Everyone does participate, and you more so have like decision makers than shot callers. It's not like in football where you call a play and then you just go on that play. Like, every play is different, every game is different. You adapt to situations. Some situations you've been in before, so it's easier to call things out. But everyone does participate in shot calling. I think Bjergsen was a reluctant shot caller, but he became better and better at it. And once he saw it as something he needs to do to succeed, he started putting more work into it and became really great at.
Okay, if League of Legends for some reason ended tomorrow, how would you like people to remember Locodoco?
I would like people to remember me as someone that really bridged East and West, and that was a great coach, and that was a great player. I was really immature at times, but hey, I'm a personality. You guys love talking about me. You guys love hating me. And I was here, and I made a significant mark. And watch out for what I do in StarCraft Remastered.
Okay, 감사합니다.
Okay, 감사합니다.
Hey, it's Crumbs. You're lost? How do you not know where you are? It's Thorin's channel.